Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this week's webinar with Anicca Digital. It's a very different format today because it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and not our normal 9 o'clock in the morning. This webinar is in conjunction with the East Midlands Chamber. It's their skills week, or it has been their skills week. And I have tried to provide lots of really useful information. So please go and have a look in the handouts where you'll find the full version of this presentation and also a page full of links. Great to see that the handouts are working. Now, while I'm waiting for everybody to arrive, I'm going to do a couple of polls. So I will need you to let me know that the polls are okay. So my first poll is, what is your current employment status? I'm a business manager or owner, and I'm responsible for recruiting and training staff. So hopefully I'll start to get some answers. And the reason for the people that are new to this, the reason I'm reading out the questions is because it doesn't show up in the video. So what is your current employment status? I'm basically an employer and I'm responsible for recruiting staff. I'm an employee looking to increase my own skills or that of my team. I'm a student looking to understand my career options. I finished my studies, or I'm currently unemployed and looking to understand my options as well. I'm a trainer, or I work in further education. Okay, so yeah, quite a definite split here. It's about 60% of the people are actually employees looking to increase their own skills, and about 26% are people that are actually employing other people, and then obviously the difference is a few people working in education. Okay, so that's great. So let's go back to the queue and I'll put another one up. So I'm going to start polling again. So you should see this one come up now. So what do you want to do next, or how can we help you? I'm looking for free resources or training. You can actually click on more than one of these, so do please click on as many as you would like to. I'm looking for a paid course with a qualification, or any paid courses, if you just want to mention that. I'm looking for work experience, an internship, or a Kickstarter job. I'm already trained and looking for a job. I'm looking for bespoke training for my team. I'm looking to partner with you to provide training with our students or customers. Oops, sorry about the typo there. And anything else. Obviously, I was trying to correct my typos and I've actually made it worse. So the majority of you looking for free resources and training, which is fine. I've got absolutely gallons of them for you. And then there's a few people looking for a paid course. And then there's a couple of people looking for an internship. Now, there's a few people that have written anything else. So it might be that that's member of staff, but if there's anything else you're looking for, if you want to put it in the chat, that would be amazing. And then I might be able to help you later. I'm just going to make sure that we're all ready to go and I can dive into the slides. If you want to make the slides bigger, if you just hit whatever button it's for you, it's usually F11, so you can see the slides. Also, if you want to minimize the chat, you can as well by closing that down. So that will make the slides a little bit bigger. So I'm going to kick off. So first of all, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what I'm going to cover. So I've talked about the, let me just go back to the, I'll tell you why I've done this. So what we're talking about is filling the digital skills gap. And I've introduced the concept of the fact that this isn't rocket science. All become revealed very, very soon about our connection with the space industry. But at the moment, I just wanted to make the comment that I am a scientist, not a rocket scientist. So I'm going to give you a little bit of my checkered history of how I became a digital marketer. I'm going to just explain what we mean by digital skills. Some of these terms are used in government think tanks, and it's quite important that we understand what we mean by that. But of course, I'm particularly focused on digital marketing skills and more advanced specialist skills in my presentation, because that's what we know the most. I'm going to explain what the digital skills gap is all about. And then the institute, or the Learning and Work Institute, which actually are on New Walk in Leicester, although they're a national organisation, we've actually done some work with them in the past. They've published some really interesting findings in March. Now, I'm just going to provide a bit of a summary of that, but if you download the handouts, you'll see a lot more of the slides. And of course, we've got all the links, so you can go through and get the full report. There's a lot of other reports in there that are really useful as well, from things like the Lloyds Bank do a report every year as well. And as we're going through, I'll make reference to them. I'm going to talk about the concept of digital discrimination. I don't know if any of you saw, you can put it in the chat, any of you saw my Route 66 post on the 18th of May, which was a month ago today. I was talking about my 5-year plan towards my 66th birthday and retirement. And one of the things that I'm really keen on is trying to find ways of avoiding digital discrimination and upskilling people from some of the groups that really just don't get the same education as some of the younger people who either get it through college or things like the Kickstarter scheme, which are designed for people under 24. Some of you would be aware that we did our survey a few months ago, and I presented some results on that. So I've just pulled out some key results on digital marketing skills. David said he saw my Route 66 plan. And then I'm then going to go into strategies and solutions. So I've got all the free resources are in this section here. So don't leave early, otherwise you'll miss it. So there's a whole load of slides on upskilling yourself and your team, and that's for free. There's also some resources, some paid courses in there. Now, I haven't really given the Chamber too much of a plug so far, but I've deliberately included a lot of the things that they're doing as well, particularly the Digital Growth Programme, but they've also got some trained courses, some paid courses as well. And then I'm going to talk about some of the employment schemes, and I'm specifically interested in telling you about the DMU scheme at the moment and the Kickstarter scheme. So both of those are really effective ways of bringing support into your organisation. Or if you're on the other side of the coin and you're looking for a placement or you're looking for help, then you should be taking those, looking at that as well. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I usually have a nice picture with my cats and my kids and my grandkids and Lewis Hamilton, because I'm a big Formula One fan. But this time I've decided to give you a little bit of a checkered history of how I got into digital marketing. So I realised this week that I finished my degree 40 years ago, obviously hitting 61, which I did last month, also coincides with finishing my degree 40 years ago. So I actually came to Leicester 43 years ago, and most of that time I've stayed in Leicester. So I started my university life in biology. I then worked I then moved into the medical anatomy department, where I did research, and then I did some work at Leicester University and Cooper's Animal Health, which is now known as GSK. So I did a couple of years there. That was the point that I had my daughter, which is why I moved away from Leicester for 3 years. I've now got grandkids, so this is sort of giving my age away really badly. I then spent 9 years working in industry work and manufacturing at BLC, which is a leather technology centre down in Northampton. And then I spent a total altogether of around, altogether it was just over 5 years working in clinical trials, and that was here. And then I then entered the world of digital marketing in January 2003, although all of this time I was involved with developing websites and helping with the first stages of digital marketing, where I started to work for a company called MediaCo. So the first Anaker was formed in 2007, which is nearly 15 years ago. So February 2022 will be our 15th anniversary, which is really unusual for a digital agency. Most of them are about 5 years old. So we've been around for 15 years. And of course, in that time, Anaker's grown massively. I've also done a few extra qualifications. So while I was at BLC, I did an MBA. and then around the time I left to go into clinical trials, I actually did my CIM exams. So I've got a couple of postgrad degrees in management and in marketing. And since then, I've also done a sort of a mini Goldman Sachs MBA as well. So I love learning, basically. So, and interestingly, you'll see some graphs in a minute about the fact that there's not many 60-year-olds that are into digital quite as much as I am. I'm in the minority by a long way, but I think I was just really lucky coming from a scientific background. Digital seemed a natural extension of that. Okay, a little bit about Anaker. Most of you have seen this slide, so I won't dwell on it, but this is some of the clients we work with. You can see by the sorts of industries that we work with, very similar to my background. We tend to do really well in these really complicated industries with quite demanding needs. So what do we mean by digital skills? So basically, the government uses this framework called Essential Digital Skills Framework. And we're actually talking about really basic skills and the fact that there's a good sort of 10% of the population that haven't even got access to the internet. There's a load of figures which I won't remember all of them now, but we talk about basic skills. This is really where my my partner's at. And my dad's at, although my stepmom is really savvy with a lot of, and we find that women, because they tend to use, older women often want to communicate with their grandkids, actually sometimes are much more tech savvy than guys that have worked on a building site all their lives, like my husband, who just about uses some of this, but doesn't do much else. And then you need a load of skills for life, things like using Word for applications, being able to use the bank, being able to upload the photos, and then you get all the work, the skills that you need for work. Now, the skills that you need for work are a little bit more complicated, but I'll just explain what we mean by the foundation skills, because there are still a big chunk of the population that haven't got these foundation skills. And this is having a massive impact in certain areas. But the majority of the presentation is about what happens at work rather than this side of things. So I'm going to dive straight into that. But it became apparent as I did more and more research that this is actually a much more bigger issue than I thought it was. And I remember pre-lockdown in the election where everybody laughed at the Labour government when they suggested free broadband for all. And I think COVID actually showed us that actually that's not such a stupid idea, because there were so many kids that didn't have access to the internet. And I've actually got some slides on that within the big presentation as well. So let's look at what we call baseline digital skills, and this is the digital skills for work. So we're really talking about using Microsoft Word, being able to use a piece of equipment at work on a production lines, where you've got to enter basic information in. So it's the sort of bread and butter of most jobs. And the good news is that actually we don't do too badly in the UK for this. It tends to be the next level that there's a big problem. But this is really, really age dependent, and you'll see the graphs in a minute, that the younger people, particularly anybody under 40, which is the millennials and the Generation Zs, they're absolutely all over it. And it's the Generation X where issues start to come. So people over 40 that we would call, they're not digital natives, so they wouldn't necessarily have had these skills at school. And they're probably finding that their kids and their grandkids actually are more. My grandson is 3 and he's completely capable of using things like YouTube without anybody supervising him. And my granddaughter is really digitally literate and using Zoom and is starting to use word processors and a lot, and he's even doing coding. So, absolutely knocking it out the park. Now, what you get when you actually start talking about more advanced digital skills, which is what we call specific digital skills clusters. And this is what I'm really interested in as an employer, but also where I think Anaker and the Chamber and lots of other people can make a real difference. And you can see it's grouped into these different sectors. What I've done all the way along, wherever there's a link, I've put them in the bottom of the page. And then if you go and grab the Word document, you can actually go and find these yourself. And I must admit, it took me about a day of research just finding all this information. And also one of my colleagues at the Leicester University, Will Darla, also provided me with quite a lot of juicy links as well. So there's a lot of great stuff in here. So I'll just go through a few of them so you can sort of get an idea of the sorts of technologies and skills that we're talking about. I'm going to flick through to sort of digital design. We're talking about graphic design here. We're talking about CRM systems. Digital marketing is in here as well. So this is going to be social media, Google Analytics. So this is the stuff that we do. This is our bread and butter. But also things like LinkedIn, you know, that's used by HR teams. And then the other area that I'm particularly interested in is digital manufacturing, because a lot of our clients are in manufacturing. And I know that Silverstone Technology Cluster, where we do the marketing for Silverstone Business Park, they've just opened a digital manufacturing unit. The new Space Park, who we're talking to at the moment, they've got a load of prototyping and a load of this technology. And it's really important in the East Midlands because of the fact that we've got such a big manufacturing interest. This is an area where we're really, really strong. So digital skills in this area is a massive area, drones, space, etc. And again, when you have a look at all the graphs, you'll see some of that data in the actual longer presentation. You've got the different skill levels. I'm not really talking today about degrees. I'm not really talking about college education. And I've also deliberately kept apprenticeships out as well. So apprenticeships are great if you've got somebody that you want to keep for the long term, you want to train them up, and there's lots of grants and things to help you with that. I'm mainly focusing on more short term, mainly people that maybe of a graduate level that want to get into work faster, and then also people that are already in employment who want to upskill. So I have been, I'm sort of avoiding the education sector and the apprenticeship sector in this presentation, and dealing mainly with what happens in a work situation. So one of the most interesting things is the impact of skills on salaries. So what I've done is this particular presentation is divided into 3 columns. So you've got salary for non-digital occupation. So that could be something like a plumber, somebody who works in a shop, somebody that works in an office doing filing, you know, lots of other skills like that. And then salary for baseline digital occupations. So this would be more somebody that works in an office, or solicitors or professionals that have to use Word, have to use technical skills and digital skills. Maybe they work on a production line and they've got to enter quality data, or they work in a warehouse and they've got to enter, you know, stock and barcodes, but it's not really a specialist skill. And then this is for the specific occupations, which is obviously something like digital marketing. It will be CAD design. It will be IT support. It will be web development, CRM, Salesforce, all that sort of stuff. So completely different levels. So what you notice straight away is even at the lower skill level, there is a premium if the job is more digital. And as you go to the high skill, which is the yellow, so a high skill non-digital occupation could be something like you know, electrician, but as somebody that's working in a digital agency, you know, would be classed as a high skill, or a web developer or something. Now, this is sort of just the averages. And to be honest, at the moment in our industry, there's such a shortage of people available to work when the demand is so high, that I've seen a £5,000 to £10,000 increase in salaries in the last 12 to 18 months. If I compare to pre-COVID. So I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't actually shift significantly upwards as the demand for these skills increases. The other thing that's really interesting is the work that the Lloyds Banks does, and they've been doing this for a couple of years now. And what they do is they have a score out of 100, and it's called a digital index. And what they've done is they've grouped people into 4 groups. So when you get the slides, you'll be able to read this in a little bit more closely. But very low is 0 to 25. Low is 25 to 50. And the difference really between these two is although they really aren't very much online, this group, some of them aren't online at all, so they would have a really low score. They may actually be doing, they may actually buying some stuff online, you know, so they could be going on to Amazon, but they're probably not using email and they're probably not using online banking. Whereas as we go up to this group, you can see they begin to be a bit more sophisticated. So they may be using a desktop for online banking. Because it's Lloyds, of course, they relate a lot of this back to finance as well. Then you've got the high group, which are going to probably have apps. They're going to be spending quite a bit of money online. They're going to be doing, they've probably got a number of different digital devices. So they've probably got a laptop and a smartphone. They've probably got a desktop at work, or they might have a tablet as well. And then you've got the very high, which is the category that the majority of you guys are going to be in either the high or very high, depending on how technical you are. It's quite unlikely that any of you will be in this bottom half, because this webinar audience is actually, you'd be surprised how skilled you are compared with the general population. So what this table does is it shows you the proportion of people with the different scores, with a score from 0 to 100. And also you can see the shift along. This is the difference between 2020 and 2021. And of course, the big difference is that COVID happened and everybody had to upskill. They had to use devices. Lots more people got online as a direct result. That's why this line has moved as a direct result of COVID and having to learn. People did online shopping for the first time. So the overall average, I think, went from 41 to 48 for the whole of the UK. And what you see these sort of peaks around the bottom, which is the sort of forgotten generation of people. A lot of these are older people, mainly over 65, but you start to get that even as low as 45 in some ethnic populations, for example. That drops off really quickly. And then you get this other pool around this here, which is a lot of work. It expects people to be in this level. But actually the numbers that are in the really advanced levels drop off very, very, very quickly. Okay, so what we saw as a result of COVID was this massive increase by 11% from 43 to 48%. And they reckoned, sorry, from a score of 43 to 48, and they reckoned that it was the equivalent of 5 years normal progress as people actually shifted their lives online. So if that's what we mean by digital skills, what do we mean by the digital skills gap? It's pretty obvious, but if you just read this through, the digital skills gap is the difference between the digital skills that a business or sector needs to run profitably, that's the level of demand, and the skills of the staff that work or could work in that business. So effectively, what we're saying is the digital skills gap is the difference between the demand and supply of people with the right skills for the employment that we need. So, and this could be at the individual job level, or it could be at the sector level. So obviously some sectors are going to need less skills than others. And what you see is if you actually go through a load of news items, if you just do some Google searches around digital skills gaps and digital skills in general, you see that there's a whole load of things in the news. Now, there's 2 reasons why there's a lot in the news at the moment. First of all, in the Queen's speech, which was around the middle of May, the government have actually introduced loads of incentives to address this, and also the publication of the Learning and Work Institutes, which I think was March. So this is the Times, and then you've got the actual report from the government, which was quantifying. This is the UK data skills gap, which is even worse, and this is to do with analytics and big data rather than something like digital marketing. So that's another one that's come in. This is Tech Monitor, and this was the day after the Queen's speech. So this was the 12th of May, and this was talking about what was in this Queen's speech with regards to training, and I'll come back onto that in a minute. And then this is the Lloyds Index, which I think was April. So they release this every year, and so some of the data in this report is from that index. So this comes out every year, and this was really to show before and after COVID and what happened with that. Then you had BBC News. So then you've got the World Skill Report. So this is there's a really good video in this. Actually, I'll put the link for the video there. So this was a presentation of a group of people that were involved in this Learning and Work report. And there's a nice video with different people explaining the key data. So that's worth a watch as well. And what I've got is in the main slides, I've got loads of slides from the actual research, but there's really too many to go through now. So what I've done is I've just pulled out some of the most important findings and how it's influencing people. So the big finding was that 76% of businesses said they lack the digital skills that would affect the profitability of their business. And some of the things that they've seen is that it's probably costing the UK economy $2 billion a year, and the way that it impacts businesses is it has an impact on everybody else. So what happens is that you have a load of impact on other staff. You have the ability or the inability to always meet your customer service objectives, increases costs, and the other thing that happens is if you're not able to keep up with your competitor, then what often happens, keep up with your digital skills. Then often, if it impacts your service or what you're doing, then you potentially can lose business to your competitor. The big thing in this report was about the difference between basic and advanced digital skills. So in most of the time, and the advanced digital skills are really those specific skills that I was talking about earlier. One of the things that's a little bit difficult when you're doing this is that different reports use different language. So I've sort of, when you look at their definition, it's very, very similar to the specific skills that were in the other report. But basic skills, things like, being able to use Word, email, timesheets, banking apps, Zoom, etc. Interestingly, most young people, most employers are reasonably happy with that. It's not such a big problem. About 70% were happy. It's the advanced skills that are the real issue. It's the more specialized and specific skills that we come across all the time, every day. We talk to a client or a student. That's the stuff that they don't know. So the data I wanted to pull out upon was not so much things like the fact that there's not as many people taking the exams and stuff like that. I wanted to talk about a term that I've called digital discrimination. So if anybody's on Twitter, you're very happy to. I think I've just invented this term, by the way. So Stanley says there's a real issue with digital discrimination. And the sorts of things I'm talking about, some of which are quite well known. So the first one is digital poverty. So this was really apparent during COVID, when suddenly everybody realized that there was only one smartphone in a house. It was being shared between various members of the family. And if you looked at the cost of them using it on their data, it was costing sort of tens of pounds a day. And actually, they could have probably bought a laptop and signed up for broadband much more cheaply, but they didn't have the means to do it. And what you see is the no home access to a laptop, desktop, or tablet, which is the orange line. As you go down the socioeconomic groups to the DEE, you can see that it was 20%. And this is households with children. So, these kids, how the hell are you supposed to do your online learning when they haven't even got the basic tools? So it's been great to see there's been lots of incentives to recycle laptops. people giving, I think it was EE or one of the other phone services giving free broadband to households with kids, but it's a real problem. Now, this group also suffers, that the only access they've got is through their phone, and they might not even have any access to the internet at all. So this is really why I'm not necessarily a Labour supporter, but actually, in retrospect, I think it's really interesting that now the Tory government are starting to talk about, well, maybe more accessible broadband isn't such a bad thing. And I know that rural broadband access has been a big problem for industry for many years, and we've talked about that for some time. The next one that I should be more annoyed about is, I guess, females are still underrepresented. Now, as I've, had, I was brought up in the 70s where, chauvinism was rife. I was unusual. I went to do biology. I've always worked in sort of science. I've always been, I've worked in industries like the leather industry where I'm the only female doing work on the shop floor. Even the pharmaceutical industry, it's still run by white middle-aged men. But particularly at the boardroom level. But I was really surprised how poor this was. I just assumed that things had changed and that ICT was much more prevalent in girls, because there's so much to encourage them to do that, particularly with everybody having iPads and everything earlier on. But you can see that it doesn't really change very much. It's between 20 and 30%. And it's only really at postgrad level that it starts to change. Now, one of the things that it might be about is the fact that they might be talking very specifically about coding and internet and programming rather than what I would call more generic digital skills. So there is not a lot of, in the report, I need to dive into it quite a lot more detail to say whether it does include other disciplines, because marketing, social media, CRM, email, SEO, copywriting, PR actually are, if you look around a marketing team or any agencies, do have a really good female split, often 50-50. If you look into Anaker, we're 50% females, and obviously I'm a female director, founder helps, but we've got pretty much an equal number of females in the senior management team, all the way down. Now, this wasn't a graph that was in the report, but I created it from the data in the appendix, and I actually think this has been really missed. And this is one of my little pet projects. I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a minute, but I think this is really, really interesting, and I want to just explain how I got this data. So there was a massive table where they looked at the different ages and they grouped people in to very low, low, high, and very high, the same as the images we saw earlier on. And so each age group adds up to 100. So if you go at one extreme, which is here to the 80 plus, you'll see that over 80% of people in the 80 plus, which is my dad's generation, they've got very, very low. They've got very low skills, and actually there wasn't any in the very high. So this generation is dominated by the very low. There's a few in the low and high, and there's no very high. Now, if you go back down to pretty much the 18 and 24s and the 25s and 29s, the 25 and 29s, most people are out of uni. They're probably also been in some training. This is the peak for the level of high skills. So very high skills between the age of 25 and 29. And remarkably, it drops off really, really quickly. Now, if you look at most of the agencies that we work with, there is a massive bubble around the 25 to 35 age group. A lot of people come straight out of university, they go into an agency, and then as they get into the more senior, about 35, 40, they start to become heads of departments. So you can see that drops off dramatically in those sorts of roles. Now, it might be that if they stop being a coder and they become a manager, they don't need so many of those roles, but it's a really significant drop off. Now, the one that really interests me is this one. This is the high. And the reason why I think this is important is because these high levels of skills are needed in so many jobs. You don't have to be a digital marketer or do a web design to need these these high skills. And what you see is this massive fallout around the age of 40. And this is why I was talking about that the millennials are the natives that grew up with social media, etc. As you go between that group and then you go to 40 to 49, so this is the Generation X, you see this significant drop off, and then you actually start to see that the low skills start to go up. And this is because there's a whole generation of people that have never needed to use computers for their day job. They might be in plumbing roles, they might have worked in manufacturing, or they've been in an office, they've gone their way up and they've not had to learn these skills. A classic example would be a marketing manager who's sort of 45. She's got a team of social media account managers, email people, SEO people working for her, and they're all 10 to 15 years younger than her, and they know more than she does when it comes to digital skills. So to me, this is a massive opportunity. These 40 to 60-year-olds, there's a big pool of talent there. And one of the things that I'm really keen to do this year, or later on this year, beginning next year, is to do some internment, some training of this group ourselves. So watch this space. I'm definitely going to be doing something on this Generation X initiative to upskill this group. And if there's anybody in the audience that thinks that's them, then I definitely think you should be having a look at what we're doing. I'm getting a lot of hello Anns in the chat. Now, the other thing that I think is really interesting is where the skills and jobs are. Now, there are pockets of skills outside of technology outside London. You get little hubs. Manchester's got a really, really strong digital economy, Leeds, Bristol, etc. But the demand for skills is significantly higher in London. And the majority of the workers that require the advanced skills, so this is the basic skills, and this is the advanced skills, are based in London. This is where a lot of the tech jobs are, a lot of the digital marketing jobs are. And in fact, when I've been looking in LinkedIn to find people, if I exclude London from my searches, it halves the number of people. So I think approximately 50% of the jobs in our industry are down in London. And then if I exclude Manchester and Leeds, you're not left with a lot more. So you can see there's a leveling up agenda to be done with digital marketing skills. Now, the great thing about this is that you could be stuck in Newcastle working for an agency like us in Leicester, or an agency in London. So this is really where the digital up agenda will work well, because I think what's going to happen is and we're already doing it. This is the last 5 people that we employed. Only Amy, who I think is in the audience, was from Uppingham. Everybody else was from outside of Leicestershire. So that means we've now got people working for us in Yorkshire. We just employed somebody else from Stafford. We've got Tom, who's in on the audience. He's come he's from Staffordshire. I've got somebody else from Manchester. I've got somebody else coming in from Luton. So literally anywhere in the country, you could potentially work for somewhere else. Well, the only problem with that is, if you try and employ somebody from London, they are earning significantly more than the people based. Oh, hello, Tom. They're earning significantly more than the people that are local. So, okay. So what this means is that we're probably going to have some form of cost of living allowance, just because people are coming from different parts of the country. And my message to anybody that's not thinking about this is, if you're not offering remote and flexi learning, you are going to be you're going to have a problem later on, because somebody else will, and you could lose your staff if you're not offering those flexi terms. Now, the other big thing for me is the diversity agenda. And for anybody that knows Anaker, we've got about a third of our staff from the BAME community. I must admit we're not so good with physical, disabilities. I don't think we've got anybody. We have in the past, but we've not got anybody that would be classed as having a disability of any sort. And I think this is really interesting. I looked at some of the data, and interestingly, ethnicity doesn't really seem to impact digital knowledge or digital skills until you reach the over 65s, and then there's a massive difference. Now that could be more a language issue, because a lot of the guys that are working with us, some of their grandparents, English, they don't really speak English at home. So, and particularly the ladies who wouldn't have necessarily worked, they're not going to have been exposed to using digital devices. I'm hoping that I'm not saying anything that's politically incorrect. I'm very conscious that sometimes I get my terminology wrong. I'm a massive advocate for equality and equitability and inclusivity. But I sometimes get the terminology wrong. But it is a real thing for me that there's a lot of untapped resources, and maybe our agenda should be fighting digital discrimination as a way to go forward. Okay, just going to give you a little bit of insight into the survey results from our survey. So the first thing was digital marketing knowledge. We had about 90 respondents from all sorts of companies of all different sizes. I think the Manchester Football Club, even their marketing team responded. So what you see is they were asked to rate their team and their staff and their team into non-existent, poor, acceptable, good, very good, and excellent. So the strongest performers were the very good and excellent, and that was altogether 31%, about a third. It was pretty much an even split between a third, and a third. And the ones that said that they were in this top group, 64% of them had a dedicated team, which is really interesting. So what that means is it wasn't related to size. It wasn't even related to turnover. So even small companies, if you've got a small e-commerce company of 5 of you, but 2 of you are doing digital marketing, then that's classed as a team, and they could have really, really strong skills. Whereas if you look to the poorer performing ones, 19 of these guys who were in the acceptable or poor had a turnover of 1 million, and they still not got the right skill set. So the size and the turnover didn't really make any difference. I think it's more about the attitude and what you're doing, and also whether it's important enough that you've actually invested in a team seems to be the differentiator. And then there's this big hump in the middle. With regard to the type of skills, this is I won't explain this in too much detail. So this is the type of channel, and then the more red it is, that means almost no knowledge or it isn't applicable, and the more green it is, then highly proficient and self-sufficient. So you can sort of see rubbish at it, brilliant at it in that direction. So the more green the better. So it's in order. And then the blue is when they've used an external agency, because that was an extra question. And so what I've done is I put it in some form of order. So the ones that had the highest skills in-house, very much the traditional marketing area. So this would have been what we call the owned and earned, particularly owned media, where you've probably got a traditional marketeer who will be doing email marketing, content marketing, organic social. They're probably doing the creative. They'll be doing traditional marketing. They've probably got a CRM system. So that will be the people that have trained in traditional marketing and migrated to a sort of a low level, almost basic level of digital marketing, the sort of essential stuff that you need to do if you run a business, really. Now, where people were weak, I'd just like to clarify that some of this is more complicated than I'm giving it credit for. So CRM systems can be quite complicated. I'm just sort of trying to generalize that that's the type of skills which were really strong. And that doesn't surprise me, because that's what everybody learns at college. Older generations above 40 would have done this, probably spent the last 20 years of their working career doing this stuff. Then if you go down to the channels where either that wasn't applicable, which some of these like digital TV, Amazon, I can understand that people wouldn't necessarily be using that. But if you start to talk about marketing automation, conversion rate optimization, pay display, video production and editing, the some of the paid ones, which are some of these, definitely were in this category. And I would say these are the more techy. You need a bigger budget, and you definitely need, you need to know what you're doing. And quite often they would be outsourced. So, it doesn't surprise me that somebody, wouldn't necessarily have the skills in house to do video, because you probably get somebody else to do it. Okay, so let's talk about some of the solutions then. So first of all, I group these together. So we want to eliminate digital poverty by providing access to devices and affordable broadband connection. I'm not saying we're personally going to be able to solve this, but as a nation, we need to solve this. We need to find mechanisms to boost training across all ages and demographics and location. And this will include uptake of courses and training where education has previously stopped. So this is the lifelong learning idea that, you can carry on learning. There are still gender inequalities, but there are other issues around digital discrimination for certain minority groups that need to be looked at. And then there's also the geographical inequalities in both supply and demand. So it's not necessarily just, it can be where the skills are, but it can also be where the jobs are. So in the Queen's speech, which was in May, the government talked about their National Skills Fund, which is 2.5 billion. And the reason why I was talking to Will at Leicester University is because he's part of a consortium that is trying to get an institute of technology within the region. So there's going to be 20 of those. They're also rolling out what we call T levels, which is sort of like a technical equivalent of A levels. And then the one that I'm really interested in is the lifetime skills guarantee. So that's adults that have never got a level 3 qualification can do so for free. Apparently that's from April, but I'm not quite sure if that's actually rolled out yet. And then the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which replaces things like the EU money, the ERDF funding, etc., which is where things like the Digital Growth Programme from the Chamber, a lot of the LEP training, and a lot of the other initiatives, that will be replaced by government money, and that's going to be targeted at bespoke employment and skills to support local needs. So there's definitely a case that, perhaps we need to put together a consortium in Leicestershire about digital discrimination and all the groups that don't get represented. And I know myself that I've taught with the Chamber on a programme that they were doing for people with autism and Asperger's syndrome. So I know that there's a lot of work that does go into this area, but I must admit, it is focused around certain groups, and there are other groups that seem to be missed out of that. And then I did say that I wasn't really covering the apprenticeship, but the apprenticeship levy fund is paid by largest employers. I can't remember what it is. I think they've got to have a wage bill of something like 3 million or something, and then they pay 1%. But what they're saying now is that they could transfer either 5 or 10% to other businesses in their supply chain, and a lot of them were paying this tax but weren't using it up. And now what's happening is people like the council in Leicestershire, the universities, some of the colleges, some of the big employers, if they're not using the fund up, they lose it. So they're sort of putting it in pots so that local businesses can use it to do apprenticeships as well. And so Will's given me this example of the West Midlands Combined Authority that's got £5 million available. So I don't know if there's a similar scheme in Leicestershire, but it would definitely be worth. Thank you, William. I'm glad to see you're here. So yeah, that was a good. I remember that well. It was 3 million plus. I don't know if Will, if you could possibly leave a comment about that, about how if there's any schemes going on in Leicestershire. I know there's people from outside of Leicestershire, so I do think that there will be schemes locally that you need to look at. So I've got lots of screens to show you. This is going to be quite a rapid fire, so you can then go and look yourself. But there's lots of places where you can get some free resources. So the first one I wanted to talk to you about is the free government resources called the Skills Toolkit. And this has been collated through things like Google, some of the banks, lots of other people have contributed towards this. And this covers everything from, well, I've got a list here. So things like maths, well-being, professional development, CVs, finance, digital design, coding, etc. So yeah, so there's a whole load of free sort of courses on there which you can access, and they're mainly in video format. And this might be something that you might want to show your nan, or there might be some maths in there, and there's lots of really useful stuff. Then you've got the free resources from Google, which are all digital marketing. I think there's something like 36 modules. And again, you just have to sign in with a Google login and you can get access to all of those. And this is the sorts of stuff that they're including in the Google, because there's also the Google Skillshop. And then you've got Bing. They've got an advertising learning lab as well. And then you've got Amazon. And this is for people who want to sell on Amazon for the first time. Then you've got Facebook Blueprint. So Facebook Blueprint is the exams that you do if you are using Facebook as a business. It also includes things like Facebook advertising, which of course quite a few of our staff have got. And the reason why it's free-ish is you can do the courses for free, but I think you have to pay to take the exams. And one of the things that we didn't mention in the other side of the in the Google Skillshop is that most of these have got exams and a certification, and you can actually put them on your CV. So if you speak to any of our team, most of them have had to do Google Analytics exams, Google Search exams for Google AdWords. They've got their Facebook exams. And that's the way we keep up our certification accreditation. So in order to be a Premier partner or a Facebook partner, you've got to have these exams and you've got to have a certain quality of your account, which means that you can wear your badge with pride. SEMRush is a tool that a lot of you will be aware of. It's very much focused on SEO, search engine optimization. And I definitely think that's something that has got some really useful stuff in there. You can also get a free account with SEMRush, so that's really useful if you want to test your site. Canva, this is like a cheap alternative to Photoshop or a free alternative to Photoshop, and it has got the basic package is free. We actually got a paid package because a few more people use it. But it just means that if you've not been trained in Photoshop and you want to create art, and they've got some training material there as well. And then you've got the East Midlands Chamber programme, so the Digital Growth Programme. I was actually a trainer for 10 years. Last year, I, slightly due to a cock up on my part on the admin of the form, I didn't actually succeed in getting the tender last year. There was a lot less tutors required. It was a blessing in disguise because nobody expected COVID. But the Digital Growth Programme, I mean, it's still on the e-Business Club website. I've been involved with this pretty much over the last 20 years. They've got an amazing range of webinars and training courses covering a whole load of subjects, usually half a day, and some of them are linked together. But the Digital Growth Program's also got grants, 35% grant. So if any of you are looking for support for digital marketing, or you want to use our services but you can't afford it, or you need some support, then the Digital Growth Programme is brilliant because it's 35% funded. Then you've got all of our resources. So we've been running these free webinars pretty much every week since April. So if you add the ones from the conference, which I think was something like an extra 20, there's well over 100 courses. They're a little bit different from the Chamber ones. They're much more practical and hands-on tips. They tend to be a bit specific. So, for example, the guide to Spotify, which a lot of people tried to get on last week, but technical internet issues in the States meant that we managed to record it. But if you haven't seen that one, go and get the recording. But if you go to our resource centre or you go to our Big Marker channel, you can either download the PDF or you can go and watch the video. It's easier to find them on the Big Marker site, but I think, and the majority of them on the Anaker site, you don't actually have to log in. You do have to log in on the Big Marker site, but there's absolutely gallons of really brilliant resources there. And then we've also got the Anaker Academy, which has got loads of slides. Now, some of these slides are a little bit out of date, but we use the Anaker Academy for our DMI course as well. The DMI course isn't free, so you won't get access to that. So I'm just going to put a link. So if you guys would like access to the DMI, to our academy, you can. It will just take a couple of days. It'll be in the middle of next week, and then you can go and get access to it. But there's lots of slides there. We haven't updated them because obviously we've been focusing on the webinars, but you are very welcome to go and get access to that. Then we've got the paid and professional courses. So this is a mixture of online and in person. So the first one I wanted to talk about was Udemy. They're really, really cheap, and quite often they give free courses away. So it's definitely worth looking at Udemy. Also LinkedIn, their courses, I think they bought Jane's, I think was what it was the name of it. So there's literally thousands of courses on LinkedIn as well. Then you've got Chamber again. They've got a load of paid and accredited courses. There's a whole load of subjects here, and this includes things like management. I've just brought up some Excel ones in their IT section. They also promote our course as well, but there's a whole load of different subjects in there. That's definitely worth looking at. And there's a membership price and a non-membership price there. You'll also notice, if I didn't put the LEP and the Gateway, the Business Gateway, they've got some as well. They tend to be a little bit more about getting started, sort of accounting, things like that. So they're more businessy than digital, but still worth a good look at. Then you've got the 12-day course from ourselves. This is really unusual because this leads to a DMI level 4 qualification, and then you can opt for CIM qualification as well. We just finished the last course literally last week, and the people from the last one, 3 of them took their exams last week, and we had 100% success rate. They all passed, which is great. And if any of you are interested in this, it's probably going to be September now, not July, which is written in this ad, because we've realised that we are waiting for the new materials from the DMI because they've updated the slides. They've not arrived yet, so we don't want to, we want to wait until they've arrived. So if any of you are interested in this, the cost is quite a big range because some people come into the classroom, some people do it online, or you can watch the videos afterwards. So you probably need to catch up with us if you want to know a bit more about that. And then this is the IDM course. I'm just going to flick through to this stuff on employment schemes. Hopefully you can still stick around because there's some really interesting stuff still to do. I know I'm running a little bit late. Oh, and Samita says she's running free digital sessions in Gujarati and English for seniors on Zoom, WhatsApp for elderly and non-business sessions people. Could you put a link in? That's really, really interesting. And then also Mark Taylor, he's giving lots of information about the levy. There's some great stuff in here. Thank you so much, guys. This is really useful. So let me carry on. So first of all, if you're a student or you're looking for your first opportunity, you're not in work at the moment, there's various ways that you can get your foot into the door. So you can do a placement or internship, and you can either do a free or a paid one. And I personally always try and make sure we pay for our placements, and we have the philosophy that we only take people on internships if we think that we will give them a job. The DMU Graduate Champion Scheme is currently open. Will, I don't know if you know if there's any Leicester University schemes at the moment. If there are, if you could possibly stick a link in the chat, that would be amazing. Then you've got the Kickstarter scheme, which is being run through now you can go through yourself, but it's a lot of paperwork. So I definitely recommend Peter from the Chamber. There's a link in a minute, and the Kickstarter scheme will pay 25 hours at minimum wage, and you need to be the candidate needs to be unemployed. So it actually goes through the job centre, but it's being managed by our scheme, and a lot of people in Leicestershire. It's been through the local chamber. We've currently got 3, and it's working really, really well. And then obviously you can go on and do further qualifications. So I know that there is a whole load of stuff. So there's a whole load of stuff around the universities, doing master degrees, etc. So how do you stand out? We get so many inquiries from people. These are the tips really to how you really stand out from the crowd. So there's things like, have you run a blog? Have you worked in other industries? Have you got any transferable schemes? And, go off and do the Google ads and the Facebook blueprint exams, because if you've got those on your CV, I'm going to be impressed. This is some of the internships and placement schemes if you're looking for one, or if you want to advertise for one. So I definitely look at the university programs. They've got job fairs. That's my first point of call, and we try and do at least 2 a year if we can, maybe more in some cases. You've got some internship finder sites. You've got career pages on local companies' websites. If you go onto ours, we've got the fact that we take on graduates and students. Take advantage of social media. Reach out to me if you're interested. Tom, if you could put my email address in the notes, that would be amazing. If the company's recruiting, they may well offer placements as well. And then networking, meetup, quite a lot of our placements we've got because they've come to Leicester Digital. And I'm going to be really pleased to announce that that's going to restart again, hopefully in August. We had hope for July, but obviously lockdowns changed the situation again. And then when you are trying to either get a student, or if you are a student, these are some of the things that you need to consider. Now, I've not really got time to go through all this because I'm already over. But I definitely think you need to make sure it's the right job. Would you love doing it? What's training is in it for you, and how you're going to get compensated. Because if you're not going to get a salary, you might as well be unemployed for a couple of months and go through a Kickstarter scheme where you will get a salary. And finally, I think this is my last slide. This is the graduate champion scheme from DMU. Sorry, I haven't got anything from Leicester University. I got this in my email this week. The forms need to be completed by the 6th of July, and there's a link there and a link to the actual website. So if you do a search for DMU graduate champions, you will find it. Effectively, the university are employing these guys, and it's for 6 weeks, and they work 18.5 hours a week. I think they get the minimum wage. And then you've got to put a project idea across. And if you're successful and they find you a graduate, then it starts in August. So thank you, Will. And if somebody from the Anaker team can just take that link as well, although I think we've got contacts already because we've obviously taken placements from university before. I think that's my last slide. The Kickstarter scheme. Sorry, I did want to mention this. So if any of you are interested in the Kickstarter scheme, I would recommend you go through the chamber. So it's just /Kickstart. There's a load of information about how it works, how to apply. It's a bit of an arduous process. It's a few hours, half a day's work. But effectively, you're getting somebody for 6 months, and their salaries paid for 25 hours. Now, we went and offered 37.5 hours, and we actually topped the wages up, which meant we had a very big influx of students. In retrospect, I don't think that was the right thing to do. I actually think that some of the students really literally have never worked anywhere before. And actually, 25 hours is about right, first of all, for them, but also for you guys, because it's a lot of supervision. And then I think that's it. So the rest is just lots of links. As you can see, there's absolutely gallons of them. So that's it from me. I'm not sure if there's any other offers or any questions. I think I'll just send you this, which is the Kickstarter one, because we will have Kickstarter placements later in the year. We're thinking of sort of October time. So if anybody's interested, or they're just about to graduate, or they've just graduated, let me know whether you're interested. And then finally, if anybody's got any questions, I'm sorry I've overrun a little bit, but hopefully you found that really useful. There's some great stuff in the chats. If you've enjoyed today and you found it useful, it would be great if you could just give us a review. We're always trying to get more reviews to show our credibility. I have to keep updating this because you guys are so kind and we get lots of reviews. But that's it for me. Next week, completely different again. You're going to love this. It's myself and Darren Wynn, my co-director, my partner in crime. And we're going to do what the FUK is OKRs, which is all about objectives, key results. We're literally creating the webinar as we talk, but you will be sent an email next week. It's all about how you do your strategy. It's all about our success with it and how it's completely changed the way we work with our management team and going forward with our staff. And if you're interested in using OKRs in your business, it doesn't matter what business you've got, even if you're a one-man band, I absolutely recommend it. It's been transformative for us. And that's it. So have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you so much. It's great to see a few people, familiar faces, and I look forward to seeing you next week. And the video will be sent around shortly. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.